My ex-fiancée didn't ask for closure. She didn't ask for closure. She didn't ask for a second chance. She asked for half my crypto, not because she invested money, not because we were married, because she said she supported me emotionally. And when I refused, she threatened my job. Here's how that ended. The first time my ex-fiancée told me she was entitled to half my crypto, she said it the same way someone might ask for oat milk instead of regular. Calm, casual, almost bored. We were sitting across from each other at a coffee shop we used to go to every Sunday when we were still planning a wedding. Same corner table, same fake plants on the wall, same barista who used to write little hearts on our cups. Emily folded her hands together, tilted her head slightly, and said, "I've been thinking about it, Ethan, and I believe I'm entitled to half your crypto. I supported you emotionally while you were building it." She didn't blink. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain rejected it as a sentence that could exist in real life. "I'm sorry," I said. "What?" She sighed, like I'd just failed to understand something obvious. "I was there during the hardest years, when you were anxious, when you doubted yourself, when you were investing instead of sleeping. I carried you emotionally. That has value." The barista called out someone's name behind me. Milk hissed in the steamer. The world kept moving like nothing had shifted, but something had. I just didn't know how much yet. For context, I'm not some crypto evangelist screaming about Lambos. I work in IT infrastructure. Mid-level, stable, predictable. I started buying small amounts of Bitcoin and Ethereum years ago when I was in a weird headspace. Not because I thought I'd get rich overnight, more because it felt like the only thing in my life I had control over. I automated my purchases, set it, forget it, long-term, cold storage. When Emily and I got engaged, she knew I invested. She teased me about it sometimes. "Future tech billionaire," she'd joke. I'd roll my eyes. We weren't flashy people. We split rent evenly, split groceries, split utilities. We had a joint checking account strictly for wedding expenses and shared bills. Everything else stayed separate. That was her idea. "I think couples function better with financial independence," she told me once. I agreed. Back then, it sounded mature. The relationship didn't explode. It thinned out. The last 6 months before the breakup felt like trying to talk through fog. Every disagreement turned into a discussion about my emotional availability. Every long workday became evidence I was withdrawing. I went to therapy. She recommended it. I worked on communication. She asked for it. But somewhere in there, the dynamic shifted from partnership to evaluation. When she ended it, she did it gently. "I just don't think we're aligned long-term anymore," she said, sitting at the edge of our bed. "You're stable, but I need more expansion." Expansion. I didn't fight her. I was tired. We divided furniture, closed the joint account, canceled wedding vendors, returned gifts, clean break, or so I thought. 3 months later, the market surged. Not overnight, but enough. The kind of appreciation where you sit at your desk and stare at numbers that don't feel connected to reality. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell anyone beyond Ryan, my best friend. "Congrats," he said when I showed him. "Now don't do anything stupid." I didn't. I moved most of it into cold storage. Hardware wallet, seed phrase secured, two-factor everything. Clean. The only person who shouldn't have known the value was Emily. But markets trend. News circulates. People talk. And one Tuesday afternoon, I got a text. "Emily. Hey, can we talk? I've been thinking about something important." I almost ignored it, but I didn't. That's how this whole thing started. Back at the coffee shop, I tried to keep my voice even. "Emily, we never had shared crypto. You never invested money into it." "That's not the point," she said immediately. That should have been my first warning. "The point," she continued, "is that you built that foundation while I was carrying the emotional weight of the relationship." I blinked. "You broke up with me." She nodded slowly, like I just confirmed her argument. "Yes, because I was exhausted. From supporting you." There it was. Reframing. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. "Supporting me how?" I asked carefully. "When you were anxious about money. When you stayed up tracking markets. When you doubted your career. I reassured you. I held you together. You don't think that contributed?" "That's what partners do. And partners share outcomes." Her tone sharpened slightly. Not loud, just firmer. "I'm not asking for everything. I'm saying half is fair." "Half," she said it like we were dividing leftover pizza. I stared at her hands. Same engagement ring indentation still faint on her finger. "You left," I said. "You said we weren't aligned." "That doesn't erase what I invested emotionally." The word invested hung in the air between us. It was almost impressive. I drove home in silence after that conversation. No music, just the hum of traffic and my own thoughts circling. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as delusion, but another part recognized something more dangerous. She believed it. Not in a greedy, cartoon villain way, in a moral way. That's what made it hard. When someone believes they deserve something, they don't see themselves as taking. They see themselves as correcting injustice. I changed every password that night, not because I thought she'd hack me, but because something about her tone said this wasn't over. 2 days later, she texted again. Emily, I don't want this to get ugly. I think we can resolve this maturely. Resolve what? There was nothing to resolve. I responded carefully. Me. There is no shared crypto. There's nothing to divide. Her reply came fast. Emily, I think you're being defensive instead of fair. Fair. That word again. I muted the conversation. The pressure didn't stay between us. My mom called that weekend. Emily reached out, she said cautiously. Of course she did. She's hurting, Ethan. She said you're refusing to acknowledge her support during the relationship. I closed my eyes. Mom, she wants half my crypto. Silence. Then a soft, careful, well, did she help you during that time? Yes, like I helped her. That's how relationships work. I just don't want this to turn into something bigger than it needs to be. Translation. Can't you just give her something and move on? Appeasement runs deep in my family. Claire, my sister, was more direct. She's asking for half, she said. That's insane. But would it be worth giving her a small percentage to make it stop? There it was again. Peace at any cost. I started to feel like I was the unreasonable one for refusing. That's how emotional manipulation works. It makes you question your own boundaries. A week later, Emily escalated. She sent me a wallet address. Just a string of letters and numbers. This is where my share should be transferred, she wrote. I've already spoken to someone about what's fair. Someone. That word bothered me more than half. I stared at the address on my phone screen. Cold, impersonal, permanent. Blockchain doesn't care about emotions. It records facts. And something about that address didn't sit right. I forwarded it to Ryan. Can you look at this? I asked. He responded 5 minutes later. Where did you get this? My ex. Pause. Ethan. This address was created last month. I felt my pulse in my throat. Are you sure? Yeah. And it's linked to a centralized exchange deposit wallet. Not yours. Not anything shared. It has zero history with your accounts. I leaned back in my chair. The room felt very quiet. Emily had said this was about fairness, about emotional investment, about shared foundations. But the blockchain was telling a different story, and I had the sinking feeling that this wasn't about the past. It was about something she thought she could rewrite. That night, she called instead of texting. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Ethan, I don't understand why you're being like this. I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you to acknowledge what I contributed. If you send the transfer, we can both move forward peacefully. Peacefully. The word felt like a velvet glove, soft, but firm. I didn't call back. I opened my hardware wallet instead, held it in my hand. Small, solid, real. There's something grounding about a device that doesn't care about narratives. It either contains your keys or it doesn't. And at that moment, I realized something that made my stomach drop. This wasn't just about money. This was about her refusing to accept that the version of me she left behind wasn't the final version, and she wanted retroactive ownership of the upgrade. I didn't know yet how far she was willing to push, but I was about to find out. I didn't respond to the voicemail. That was my first real boundary. Not an argument, not a counterpoint, just silence. For about 48 hours, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself she'd recalibrated, that maybe Ryan was right and she'd just panicked after seeing headlines about market gains and let emotion override logic. Then she sent a screenshot. It was a message drafted, but not sent to one of her friends. You won't believe how greedy Ethan is being right now, after everything I did for him. Underneath that, she wrote to me, I don't want to send this, but I need you to understand how hurt I am. It was subtle, not a threat, a preview. I stared at the screen and felt something tighten in my chest. This wasn't about numbers. This was about narrative control. I typed and erased 3 different responses before settling on, there is no shared asset. You are asking for money you did not invest. Her reply came a minute later. I invested emotionally. That counts. I called her. If she was going to escalate, I wanted her voice on record. She answered immediately. So now you'll talk? She said. I've always been willing to talk. I'm not willing to rewrite history. Silence on her end. Not stunned, calculating. You're acting like I'm asking for something outrageous. You are. I stood by you when you were insecure, when you doubted your career, when you were obsessing over price charts at 2 a.m. You don't think that stability helped you hold those investments? That's not how ownership works. You're hiding behind technicalities. There it was again. The moral framing. Emily, I said carefully, if you had invested money, we'd be having a different conversation. You didn't. She exhaled sharply. You're reducing everything I did to nothing. I'm separating emotional support from property rights. You're being cold. That word landed harder than it should have, because I knew what she meant. I wasn't engaging in the emotional plane she wanted. I wasn't validating the premise. You broke up with me, I said quietly. You said I wasn't expansive enough. That doesn't mean I didn't build you up. You left. And now you're punishing me. That was new. By not giving you half my assets? By pretending I didn't contribute to your success. Success? I almost laughed again. I still worked the same job, still drove the same car. The only thing that changed was a digital number on a ledger. But in her mind, that number had become proof of something. Proof she miscalculated, proof she left too soon. And now she wanted to correct the timeline. I'm not transferring anything, I said. Her voice hardened. Then I'll have to consider other options. That's when the temperature changed. What options? I've spoken to someone about legal recourse. My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. On what basis? Common law claims, shared asset development during engagement, emotional labor contributing to financial gain. It sounded rehearsed. Who did you speak to? A friend. Of course, I didn't argue. I just said, if you think you have a claim, file it. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was softer. I didn't want it to go this way. That line felt practiced. Then don't take it there. You're leaving me no choice. There it was, the final twist of accountability. I hung up first. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't angry. I was tired. That night I changed more than passwords. I moved everything. Fresh wallets, new addresses, hardware backup verified, two-factor reset, recovery codes printed and secured. Ryan came over to double-check everything. She's bluffing, he said, leaning back in my desk chair. There's no legal basis here. Engagement isn't marriage. I know. You sound like you don't. I'm thinking about reputation. That's what she was really threatening. Not court. Narrative. The next escalation came through my sister. Claire called on a Tuesday. She reached out to me, Claire said carefully. Let me guess. I'm heartless. She said you promised to build a future together, and now you're hoarding the outcome. I rubbed my eyes. Did she mention that she ended the engagement? She said you emotionally withdrew and forced her hand. Of course she did. Claire, if I give her anything, I validate this. I know, she said softly. I don't want this dragging out. Neither did I. But I also didn't want to pay an exit fee for a relationship she chose to leave. A few days later, she showed up at my apartment building. No warning. The concierge called up. There's a woman here asking for you. Says it's urgent. I almost told them to send her away. Instead, I went down. She looked calm, composed, dressed like she had somewhere important to be after this. We need closure, she said. We had closure. You're avoiding the real conversation. I've been very clear. She lowered her voice. You're making me look like a fool. And there it was. The truth finally slipped out. This isn't about support, I said. Her jaw tightened. You think this is about money? I think it's about regret. That hit. Her composure cracked for half a second. You don't get to psychoanalyze me. You left because I wasn't ambitious enough. I left because you were stagnant. And now I'm not. Her silence confirmed more than any admission could. I'm not asking for everything, she said again, softer now. Half is fair. It was almost hypnotic how she kept returning to that number, like repetition could make it reasonable. You don't get equity in someone's life because you dated them. That's cruel. No, it's reality. Her eyes hardened. If you don't handle this privately, I won't protect your image. There it was. Not velvet anymore. You mean you'll tell people your version? I'll tell the truth. I stepped back. Then make sure you have proof. She stared at me like I just insulted her character. You think I'd lie? I think you already are. That's when she mentioned the wallet address again. I sent you where to transfer it. I expect you to act in good faith. I checked that address, I said evenly. It was created last month. For the first time since this started, she looked genuinely thrown. That's irrelevant. No, it's not. It's where my portion should go. Your portion of what? She didn't answer directly. It's symbolic. Symbolic. A digital wallet address. Symbolic. Blockchain isn't symbolic, I said quietly. It's literal. Her frustration finally surfaced. You're hiding behind technical systems because you don't want to admit what you owe me. I realized something then. She wasn't trying to prove legal ownership. She was trying to force moral admission. If I transferred anything, even a fraction, she'd have validation. And that validation mattered more to her than the money. I owe you closure, I said. Not half my assets. You owe me acknowledgement. I acknowledge we were in a relationship, that's it. Her eyes went cold. Then don't be surprised when this becomes public. I didn't respond. I walked back into the building and left her standing there. That night, I filed a non-emergency harassment report, not because she'd done anything illegal yet, but because I wanted a paper trail. Officer Daniel Brooks called me the next afternoon. Calm voice, professional. Mr. Carter, I understand there's been repeated unwanted contact? Yes. Any threats? Reputational, not physical. He paused. Let me be clear. Emotional disputes don't create property rights. If she believes she has a civil claim, she can file it properly. Showing up and pressuring you is not the way to handle it. Hearing someone neutral say it felt like oxygen. She's framing it as fairness, I said. He almost chuckled. Sir, fairness and law are not the same thing. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until that moment. After that call, I felt steadier, but the escalation wasn't finished. Because 2 days later, she sent one final message, a screenshot of a drafted email addressed to my HR department. Subject line, concern regarding financial ethics. And beneath it, just one line from her, last chance to resolve this privately. That's when I understood. This wasn't about half anymore. It was about control, and we were heading straight for collision. When she sent the HR screenshot, something in me went still. Not panicked, not furious, clear. Up until that point, I'd been negotiating with the idea that she might step back, that if I explained enough, documented enough, reasoned enough, she would eventually recognize the line. That screenshot erased that illusion. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Officer Brooks back. She's now threatening my employment, I said. I have screenshots. Forward them, he said. Calm, unmoved. We'll add it to the file. I did. Then I called Ryan. She's escalating, I told him. She won't send that email, he said. You're assuming she wants resolution. I think she wants leverage. He went quiet for a second. Then stop reacting emotionally. Respond procedurally. So I did something I hadn't done yet. I emailed her. Not a text, not a call, an email. Subject line, documentation. Emily, your recent messages implying you may contact my employer are being added to an official harassment report. If you believe you have a legal claim, file it through proper civil channels. Do not contact my workplace, family, or residence again. Any further attempts will be handled formally. Ethan. No anger, no commentary, just a line in the sand. She responded 20 minutes later. You're unbelievable. Then, so now I'm a criminal for asking for fairness? I didn't reply. That night she showed up again. This time she didn't wait in the lobby. She called from outside. I just want to talk face to face like adults, she said. Her voice wasn't angry, it was strained, controlled. You shouldn't be here. You're hiding behind police reports. I'm protecting myself. From me? Yes. Silence. Then she said something that finally cracked the veneer. You weren't supposed to become successful without me. The honesty stunned me. Not because it was cruel, because it was raw. I didn't, I said quietly. This didn't happen overnight. It happened after I left. No, the growth happened years ago. You just didn't think it would. Her breathing shifted on the line. You were comfortable being average, and you were comfortable thinking you'd outgrow me. That landed harder than anything else we'd said. She didn't deny it. Instead, she pivoted. You told me we were building a future together. We were. And now you're building it alone. You chose that. Her composure started to unravel. You think I don't regret leaving? She snapped. You think I don't replay that decision? There it was. Not entitlement. Regret. I don't owe you compensation for regret, I said. I helped you believe in yourself. And you stopped, she laughed bitterly. I stopped because you weren't moving fast enough. And now? Now I see what I walked away from. The air between us felt different, less legal, more human. And that's what this is, I asked. You trying to rewrite that choice? You wouldn't have held those investments if I hadn't stabilized you. That's not ownership. It's partnership. It was. Past tense. She shifted gears again. You promised me security. I promised to try. And now you have it. Yes. And I get nothing. That sentence carried more hurt than greed. And for a second I saw the version of her I'd loved, the one who believed in building something together. But that version wasn't the one threatening my job. You left, I repeated. Not cold, just factual. She inhaled sharply. You're acting like I abandoned you. You did. The silence stretched. Then she said it. If you don't transfer something, I will send that email. There it was, final form. Go ahead, I said. Her voice faltered. You're willing to risk your career over this? I'm willing to risk discomfort, not integrity. She didn't answer. Instead, she said, check the wallet address again. I did. Look at the transaction from 2 weeks ago. My stomach tightened. I opened my laptop, pulled up the blockchain explorer, typed in the address she'd sent. There it was. A transaction. Small, a test amount from one of my old exchange wallets. My pulse spiked. I traced it back. It was mine. But I hadn't sent it. Then it clicked. Months ago, during the engagement, I'd tested a withdrawal to an external address while we were sitting at the kitchen table. I'd typed the address wrong, canceled, re-entered, corrected it. That first mistyped string must have been copied somewhere, and she'd saved it. She'd kept it. She'd waited. You see, she said softly. There's proof of connection. My throat felt tight. You saved an old mistyped address. It's linked to you. It's not linked to you. It's linked to us. No, I said more firmly now. It's linked to an input error from a test transaction. There is no history of shared funds. None. You're splitting hairs. I'm splitting facts. She went quiet. Then her voice dropped. You're humiliating me. I'm not. You're making me look desperate. You're doing that yourself. That hit harder than I intended. Her breathing became uneven. You could make this go away, she whispered. Just transfer something. 10%. A gesture. There it was. The validation. The proof. She didn't want half anymore. She wanted acknowledgement in the form of money. If I send you anything, I said slowly, you'll tell yourself you were right. Because I am. No, because you need to be. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy. You really think I'm a bad person? She asked quietly. That question hurt more than everything else combined. No, I said honestly. I think you made a decision, and now you don't like the outcome. She didn't argue. For the first time since this started, she didn't have a pivot. I didn't think you'd grow past me, she admitted, barely audible. That was the truth underneath all of it. Not greed, not law, ego. And I didn't think you'd try to bill me for leaving, I replied. A shaky laugh escaped her, then silence. I'm not sending anything, I said gently now. If you contact my work, I'll escalate formally. If you file something civilly, I'll respond there. But I'm done negotiating morality. The air between us felt like something breaking, not violently, just finally. You've changed, she said. I had to. She didn't threaten again. She didn't argue. She just said, I hope it was worth it, and hung up. I stood there in my apartment, laptop still open, blockchain explorer glowing on the screen. The wallet address hadn't lied. It had just revealed something I didn't want to see. This was never about crypto. It was about her realizing the version of me she left behind wasn't the final version. And she couldn't stand not being part of the upgrade. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because the woman I'd planned to marry had just tried to invoice me for believing in me. And that realization hurt more than any number on a screen ever could. She never sent the email to HR. I know because I asked. Not in a paranoid way. Just in a calm, procedural one. I scheduled a quiet meeting with my manager, showed him the documentation, and said, if anyone contacts you about my personal finances, here's the context. He skimmed the screenshots, looked at me over his glasses, and said, this is personal drama, not corporate misconduct. You're fine. That was it. No scandal, no formal inquiry, just a grown man recognizing a relationship implosion for what it was. That conversation gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Stability. After that, Emily went quiet. No texts, no calls. No late-night voicemails layered with righteousness and regret, just silence. At first, I didn't trust it. I checked the blockchain daily, like it might suddenly change its mind. Like numbers might rearrange themselves out of guilt. They didn't. Immutable means immutable. 2 weeks passed before I got one final email. Subject. Closure. It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was almost tired. I've decided not to pursue anything legally. I don't have the energy for it. I hope someday you understand that I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just didn't want to feel erased from something I helped build. That line stuck with me. Not erased. That's what this was about. She didn't want to feel like she had misjudged me, like she had walked away from potential, like she had invested years into something that matured without her. Money just made it tangible. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I did something I probably should have done earlier. I transferred the small amount that had been sitting in our old joint exchange account. The leftover balance from when we had once talked about experimenting together. It wasn't much, a few $1,000s at most, documented, Clean. Then I emailed her back. I've transferred the remaining balance from the shared exchange account. That closes anything financially connected to both of us. I won't be engaging further. I wish you well. No emotion, no accusation, just a door closing. She responded hours later. You didn't have to do that. But she didn't send it back. That was the last direct communication we had. I blocked her number the next morning, not out of anger, out of self-preservation. My family adjusted slowly. My mom stopped suggesting compromise once she saw the screenshots of the HR draft. Claire apologized for telling me to just give her something. I didn't realize how far she'd push, she said. Neither did I. That's the part that lingers. Not the money, the shift. You think you know someone when you plan a wedding with them, when you argue over venues and guest lists and whether to splurge on photography. You think those negotiations prepare you for conflict. They don't prepare you for being told you owe someone equity in your own growth. In the months after the market corrected, some gains dipped, some rose again. Volatility did what volatility does. And weirdly, I stopped checking as obsessively, because the number had stopped being the point. It wasn't a scoreboard anymore. It was just an asset. What stuck with me wasn't the attempt to claim half. It was the moment she said, "You weren't supposed to become successful without me." That sentence reframed everything. We talk a lot about supportive partners, about building together, about shared sacrifice. But support isn't a stock option. It isn't retroactive ownership. You don't get dividends from someone you chose to walk away from. At the same time, I can't pretend I feel triumphant. I loved her. I was ready to marry her. And somewhere in there was a version of us that might have worked if timing and ego and expectation had aligned differently. When I think about her now, I don't feel rage. I feel a dull, complicated sadness, because I know she genuinely believed she had contributed to my stability. And in some ways, she had. She encouraged therapy. She challenged my comfort zones. She pushed me when I was coasting. But encouragement isn't ownership. Love isn't a lien. And regret isn't a bill you can send to someone else. I moved apartments a few months later, not because I had to, because I wanted a clean environment that didn't echo with conversations about fairness and entitlement. The hardware wallet sits in a small safe in my new place. Same seed phrase, same cold storage, same methodical approach. Sometimes I hold it and think about how strange it is that something so small became the center of a moral war. But the wallet didn't start it, expectation did. And expectation, when mixed with regret, can turn into entitlement faster than most people realize. If she had asked for a conversation about closure, I would have given it. If she had said, "I regret leaving, I misjudged you," I would have listened. Instead, she asked for half, and in doing that, she closed the door herself. I don't hate her, but I don't trust her version of reality anymore. That's the part that doesn't recover. Some losses aren't financial, they're conceptual. You lose the belief that someone sees you clearly, and once that's gone, no transfer fixes it. The blockchain recorded the transactions. The police file recorded the escalation. But the real ledger that changed was internal. I learned something uncomfortable. Sometimes people don't want what you built. They want proof they mattered to it. And if they can't have proof, they'll try to create it. The wallet address said otherwise. And this time, I listened to the ledger instead of the guilt. That's as close to closure as I'm getting. She said emotional support created equity. But the blockchain doesn't recognize feelings. It only records truth. I didn't lose half my crypto. I lost the illusion of who she was. And that cost more than any number on a screen.